So you want to travel to Iceland? Well, you've come to the right place. Let's plan your trip to one of the most unique places on the planet. Now, I almost always tell people to book your flights from two separate airports so that you don't need to backtrack while exploring a country. However, that's not the case since Iceland only has one international airport. When you fly into Iceland, be prepared for an extra leg of your journey. Iceland's airport is about 1 hour by bus outside the city. Once you get off your flight, you're going to go through customs. You'll need to book a bus ticket. This is fairly simple to do. The bus ticket is over the counter and it's near the exit of the airport. Just go up to the desk, use the automatic kiosk to buy a ticket. This is where you're going to get your first taste of how expensive Iceland can be. Your ticket is going to be anywhere from $25 to $30, however, it's your only option. Now, let's talk about Iceland's capital, Reykjavik. We're going to assume that this is a 1-week trip about Iceland, so we need to make sure that we use our time accordingly. Reykjavik is actually a very beautiful city, which is surprising because most capital cities are kind of dirty and overall there's not too much to do. You're going to spend roughly about 2 days in Reykjavik, however, not in a row. Spend your first full day in the city walking around, trying some of the local delicacies such as whale steak, fermented shark, or even puffin if that's what you would like. I would also recommend just to walk around the city and explore it. It's quite small and you can walk around the whole city in about a day's time. But where do you stay? Now this is tricky because Iceland is extremely expensive. Well, there's a really nice and unique hostel and it's called Kex Hostel. It's a true backpacker's hostel with an amazing bar inside. It's right near the water as well, and which is what happened to me and can actually happen to you. You can even see the northern lights from your bedroom. Well, what about food? Well, like I mentioned earlier, Iceland has some of the most unique foods on the planet, but be prepared to pay for them. The cheapest, and by far the cheapest, is 101 Reykjavik street food. Here you can get about a fish and chips for roughly $10 to $12, which again is the cheapest meal in Iceland by far. However, for a nice dining experience, check out Icelandski Barin, which is a restaurant which serves some of the most unique dishes in Iceland that I've recommended before. Truthfully, most people while they road trip and travel through Iceland actually cook and make sandwiches for while they're on the road. There's one really great grocery store in Iceland. It's called Bonus, and you'll know it because the store is entirely yellow and their mascot is the pink pig from The Simpsons, and I am not kidding. Now let's talk about rental cars. You're in Iceland. You don't want to stay in the capital the entire time. You want to explore the beautiful waterfalls, the glaciers, the mountains. Well, that means you need to rent a car. A great rental car place that I used is Blue Car Rental. Now, it's extremely important that you listen to what the rental car company has to tell you. Wind can severely damage your car, and it may be wise to buy insurance. Personally, we didn't. We had ours already covered through our credit card, but it's a real danger. You must open the doors slowly or they will fly off. And regularly, the size car, it doesn't really matter too much. Personally, we use the super small car, but some people go for SUVs. But do not think that you need the SUV. A small car for Iceland will do just fine. The Golden Circle. Iceland is a country where being organized is super important, so that means the most efficient way to travel around Iceland is to start with the Golden Circle. The Golden Circle is a route near Reykjavik, which is the most common first road trip while in Iceland. You must start heading to the first location before the sun comes up if you want to complete it all in one day. Your first stop is going to be Kerio, an old volcanic crater that has turned into a lake. This crater is estimated to be formed around 4000 BC. You can walk around the crater, you can walk down into the crater, and even get some great pictures from a bench they installed right at the foot of the water. This crater is roughly 1 hour from Reykjavik and plan to spend roughly 30 to 40 minutes here. Stop number 2 is going to be Strokkur Geysser. This location is full of geothermic geysers that are erupting all the time. However, you must be incredibly careful as some of the temperatures can reach over 100 degrees Celsius. You'll be able to walk through the geyser area and loads of different sized geysers, but I will warn you, if you have a sensitive nose, then be prepared for a smell of sulfur. You'll spend again about 45 minutes to an hour here and then you'll be on your way. This next stop is easily one of my favorite places in Iceland. Stop number 3 is Gullfoss Waterfall, or in simpler terms, the most famous waterfall in the world. I've seen some beautiful waterfalls in my time, but this one takes the cake. It is absolutely massive and it shows the power of nature. You can grab some really great photos here and just soak in what this waterfall has to offer. Additionally, there's almost always a rainbow, but that's pretty common almost everywhere in Iceland. Plan to spend about 30 minutes here because the parking lot is right next to the waterfall. The fourth stop is going to be the most amount of time you're going to spend in the Golden Circle, and that is Pingvellir National Park. The National Park is absolutely beautiful with a ton of great hikes and walks. You'll most likely be very exhausted at this point because you've already seen a lot today, so I suggest that you pick one of the short trails or hikes and explore it. After that, you'll head back to Reykjavik for a night of rest and get ready for tomorrow's drive. Now, let's talk about the second day of the road trip. Again, while in Iceland, you'll need to be aware of how much sunlight you have. So you'll want to head out of town while the sun is still down. However, this is a very big warning. Once you start heading in the direction of Iceland, you will lose access to many food, petrol, and grocery store options. So make sure you buy sandwiches, drinks, snacks while you're in Reykjavik, and make sure that you fill up on petrol. The first stop is going to be Gullfoss Waterfall. This waterfall is absolutely massive. You're almost guaranteed to see a rainbow here when you arrive, and if you get there at nighttime, there's a great chance you'll be able to see the northern lights. Plan on spending about 30 minutes at this stop. Next up is the Black Sand Beach in Vik. This is a relatively short drive away from Gullfoss, but it's amazing in its own way. You'll be able to drive right up to the beach and observe the entire beach that is completely black in color. The air here is so unbelievably crisp and the waves are crashing, making it feel like a movie. In my opinion, it's a phenomenal spot to stop and have a picnic with what you got from the grocery store. You're probably thinking, if this is a remote part of Iceland, where do you stay? Well, me and my mates found this one phenomenal guest house just about an hour north of the beaches, and it's easily the cheapest and nicest place around. I'm going to butcher the name here, but it's called Sky Huso Guest House, and it has everything from single rooms to 3 persons, absolutely phenomenal kitchen that does have an emergency food storage like pasta and beans. If you need it, you have to pay for it, obviously. And it's located right next to where your day 3 activity is going to begin. Day 3 will begin with what I'll say is my absolute favorite part of Iceland. It's a glacier hike. In Iceland, you'll have the opportunity to hike a real-life glacier and trek down into the ice caves. To book this, you'll actually just walk out of the door of the guest house, and about 10 feet away, there's going to be a shack, and it's called Glacier Adventures. You'll actually even get a discount if you're staying at the guest house for the trek. This is where you'll get suited up in your harness, your ice shoes, your helmet, and you'll be driven by a massive truck over to the glaciers. And if you get car sick, then just be prepared because it's going to be a very bumpy ride. But here's going to be one of the most magical locations on the planet. You'll be faced with an entire glacier wall as the host of shows such as Game of Thrones and Interstellar. You'll be faced with streams of glacier water, which is actually the purest on the planet. Feel free to take a sip. Then begin your trek up the glacier and eventually be surrounded 360 by an enormous size of Iceland's largest glacier. Eventually, you're rappelled down into the glacier itself. Here's where you'll see the color of blue that honestly I've never seen before in my entire life. Walk through the ice caves, place your hands on the glacier, and honestly just take your time. Guides are very lenient with the amount of time that you'll spend down there. However, the expedition is not over once you leave. Climb out of the glacier and be taken down into the ice caves. These caves have water rushing through it and very low ceiling. However, it's like being on another planet in itself. Somehow, the light makes it through the ice cave and crystallizes everything. This tour is expensive. I want to say it's roughly about $200 per person, but in my opinion, it's worth every single penny. Now, at this point, it will be about midday and you'll be absolutely exhausted. So it's best if you stay at the guest house for just one more night. After all this, you'll be heading back to Reykjavik, but you have to do a stop or two along the way. Many people will tell you to go to the Blue Lagoon, which is a hot spring resort that is favorited by influencers. However, it's extremely overpriced. Instead, I suggest you check out something called the Secret Lagoon. It's a natural hot spring in Iceland that almost no tourists go to, and it's relatively inexpensive. It's about $10 for entry for an amazing place to relax. Another one of Iceland's most popular adventures, and I'm going to butcher the name entirely, is Fagradós volcano. About 2 weeks prior to my visit, the volcano was actually active and it had lava spewing out of it. So it's truly something incredible to see. I would absolutely recommend you do that, and it's an hour drive from the capital, or you can book a tour if you would like to. Now it's time for your Iceland Fast 5. Number 1, English. English is so common in Iceland, everyone speaks fluent English, so don't worry about any language barrier in Iceland at all. Number 2, expensive. Iceland is the 3rd most expensive country in the world, so understand that when you're going in. Number 3, plan ahead. Iceland is very popular, so I would recommend booking everything at least 1 month in advance. Number 4, weather. The weather can be very sporadic in Iceland, so bring warm and waterproof clothes. Number 5, avoid tours. Unless it's one of the ones that I mentioned in this video, I recommend not doing any other tours that you see in Iceland because it's a waste of money. So that's going to be it, travelers, for your ultimate guide to Iceland. I hope you can use this to aid your journey to see more of the world. I want to thank all the Patreon members for supporting the channel, and if you'd like to check out some of the new tiers, you can even decide what country we go to next. So grab a bag, book a flight, and have the adventure of a lifetime.